My son was told to sit on the dirt while the other kids laughed from their chairs. I watched him lower himself to the ground with a plate in his lap, while my cousin smirked and said, "There aren't enough chairs for guests like you." I bit my tongue. My hands were shaking. He didn't cry. He didn't say a word. But I saw the look in his eyes, and it broke something in me. And just as I was wondering how much more I could take, a black limousine pulled up by the picnic tables. Everyone turned to look. My cousin's mouth dropped open, and out stepped someone they never expected, holding 2 folding chairs and a look that said he wasn't here for small talk. Saturday morning started like most weekends, quiet, slow, with the soft hum of cartoons playing in the background and the smell of toast in the air. My son, Elijah, sat at the kitchen table drawing a rocket ship with crayons, humming to himself. He always hums when he's happy. That morning, I wanted nothing more than to keep us in that little bubble. But it was the day of the annual family picnic, an event that always came with more tension than joy for me. It's hosted by my mother's side of the family. Big personalities, bigger opinions, and a long history of quiet judgment. Still, I always showed up. I wanted Elijah to know his roots, even if mine were tangled. I laid out his favorite blue polo shirt and khaki shorts. He dressed without complaint, brushing his curly hair back the way he liked it. Then he looked up at me and asked, "Do you think Grandpa Robert will let me help him on the grill this year?" I smiled, though I knew the answer. "We'll see," I told him. I didn't have the heart to remind him that Grandpa Robert barely acknowledged us at the last 2 gatherings. We packed a dish to bring. My mom's old macaroni salad recipe, the one with the smoked paprika and little bits of pickle that Elijah loved. I even wrapped it in a red and white checkered cloth, trying to lean into the whole picnic vibe. It was my peace offering, my olive branch, my "I'm still trying." We drove through winding suburban streets until we reached the rented park pavilion. It was already full. Dozens of cars, balloons tied to picnic tables, and kids running wild through the grass. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker near the grill where Uncle Robert held court, flipping burgers and handing out tongs like he was king of the backyard. I spotted my cousin Danica almost immediately. She always stood out, not just because of her designer sundresses or the way she talked like she was being interviewed on daytime TV, but because of how she made everyone feel smaller just by standing still. She saw us walking up, Elijah holding the macaroni dish carefully with both hands. She offered a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Amara," she said, drawn out and overly sweet, like syrup poured on something bitter. "You made it. How brave." "Hey, Danica," I replied, keeping my tone light. Elijah beamed and stepped forward with the dish. "We brought food." Danica barely glanced at it before turning to someone else. "Chairs are first come, first served," she said over her shoulder. "We didn't expect so many people to show, so, you know." I looked past her. Every table under the canopy was packed. Grown cousins and their kids, aunties fanning themselves, teenagers glued to their phones. Every single chair was taken or saved with someone's purse or plate. No one made a move to help. No one even acknowledged Elijah. I turned to Elijah, but he didn't need instruction. He looked down at the grass, then back at me. I saw the moment of hesitation, the flicker of embarrassment. But then he smiled, like he was determined not to let it get to him. "It's okay, Mom. I don't mind," he whispered. "We can sit on the grass. It's soft." I wanted to scream, not because there weren't enough chairs, but because I knew this wasn't about chairs. It never was. Danica and her little clique had drawn the lines years ago. I was the girl who married too young, got divorced, worked 2 jobs, and never seemed to get the memo that we were less than. Elijah was just collateral in a quiet war of subtle slights. Still, I nodded. I laid a napkin on the ground beside the last picnic table, helping him set down his plate. He sat cross-legged, balancing macaroni salad and a chicken leg like it was perfectly normal. He looked up and gave me a small smile. "It's actually kind of nice down here. I can see the ants." I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said. "Real nice." I stood there, trying to pretend like it didn't hurt, like I wasn't watching my child eat on the ground while people I grew up with sat in folding chairs and acted like we didn't matter. And for a minute, I considered leaving, grabbing Elijah's hand and walking back to the car and never looking back. But then something else crossed my mind. Someone else. So I walked away from the group, quietly, phone in hand, My son deserved better than ants and pity smiles, and I knew exactly who to call. I walked away from the picnic tables with my phone in hand, past the parking lot, toward the little grove of trees that lined the edge of the park. I pretended to be checking messages, but I was really trying to calm down. My fingers shook as I tapped open my contacts. I scrolled until I found his name, Malcolm Bennett. Grandpa to Elijah, my late father's brother, the one person who had always seen me, even when the rest of the family looked right through me. Malcolm had distanced himself from these family events years ago. After a nasty falling out with Uncle Robert over a business deal gone wrong, he stopped showing up. Most people pretended like he didn't exist, but not me. He was the one who helped me get my first apartment after the divorce, the one who taught Elijah how to build birdhouses in his garage. He had his flaws. He could be stubborn, a little dramatic, but he loved us. I hesitated with my thumb over the call button. Would he even answer? Would he think I was being petty? Number I pressed the button and held the phone to my ear. It rang twice. "Hey, Pumpkin," he answered, warm and casual like he had just been waiting for me to call. I didn't say anything at first. My throat felt tight. "Amara?" he asked. "They made Elijah sit on the ground," I said, my voice low. There were chairs, but Danica said they were for the guests, like we weren't family. There was a pause, no background noise, just quiet. He's sitting cross-legged on a napkin with a paper plate in his lap, smiling like it's okay. But it's not okay, Malk. It's not okay. His voice dropped into that steady, calm tone I knew so well. "Where are you?" "Brookfield Park, near the lake. I'll be there in 20. He hung up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and returned to the tables. Elijah was still sitting where I left him, carefully eating around the edges of his plate. Some of the kids were nearby playing tag. None of them invited him. No one said a word to him. Danica sat at the head of one of the tables, flipping through photos on her phone and laughing with a few of our cousins. She didn't glance our way once. "Amara," she called out suddenly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You want a bottle of water or something? I mean, I'm sure it's not super comfy down there." My lips pressed into a thin smile. "We're fine, thanks." She shrugged and turned back to her phone. One of the cousins snorted. Another whispered something behind her hand. I caught my Aunt Camille giving me a pitying look from across the table. It wasn't just the lack of a chair. It was the way they made space for each other, passed food around like communion, saved seats with name cards, and left me and my son sitting in the dirt like we were an afterthought. Elijah looked up at me. "Are we leaving soon?" "Not yet," I said. "There's something I want you to see." He nodded and went back to eating. No complaints, not even a flicker of frustration. That hurt more than anything, how used to this he was. 15 minutes passed, maybe 20. I kept checking my phone, watching the entrance to the park. Then I heard it, a low rumble, deep and smooth, heads turned. The kind of sound you feel in your chest before you even see what's coming. And then it appeared, long, black, polished like glass, a limousine, driving slowly past the playground straight toward the pavilion. Everyone stared. A few kids stopped mid-tag and pointed. Even Danica lowered her phone and stood up. The limo came to a stop just feet from the edge of the grass. The back door opened with a quiet click. Out stepped Malcolm, wearing a crisp white shirt, light tan slacks, and the aviator sunglasses I once told him made him look like a retired spy. He was holding 2 gray folding chairs in one hand like they weighed nothing, in the other a cooler bag. He didn't say a word. He didn't wave. He walked straight toward me and Elijah, eyes locked on us the entire time. Behind him, a young man in a black suit, the driver, I assumed, lifted a small folding table from the trunk and set it beside the chairs. Danica's voice broke the silence. What is he doing here?" But no one answered, because Malcolm was here, and everything was about to change. The air felt thicker when Malcolm arrived, like the picnic had suddenly shifted from a casual family get-together to something else, something heavier, charged. The music from the Bluetooth speaker kept playing, but nobody was listening to it anymore. All eyes were on him. He walked slowly, deliberately across the grass toward us. Elijah's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He looked up and squinted. "Is that Grandpa Malcolm?" I smiled. "Sure is." Elijah stood up and brushed his hands on his shorts. "Why is he here?" He heard you didn't have a seat, I said, so he brought one. Malcolm reached us, gave me a nod, then bent slightly to Elijah's level. Hey, champ, didn't look right to me. Thought I'd fix that. Elijah's smile lit up his whole face. You came in a limo. Malcolm grinned. Only way to make an entrance. He set the 2 folding chairs down beside the patch of grass where Elijah had been sitting, then opened the cooler bag. The smell of something sweet and familiar drifted out. His peach cobbler. He'd made it fresh. Warm, flaky crust, cinnamon and sugar baked into golden fruit. He handed a container to Elijah and winked. Made your favorite. Thought you could use some VIP treatment. Thanks, Grandpa, Elijah whispered. Then Malcolm turned and set up the folding table, clicking the legs into place with practiced ease. The driver, silent and professional, laid a clean cloth over it and placed down plates, utensils, and a small cooler of drinks. It wasn't just a chair anymore. He was building us a space, a table, a presence. I saw Danica watching, mouth tight, arms folded. Her husband glanced over, clearly uncomfortable. A few of the kids had wandered closer. The entire rhythm of the picnic had been disrupted, but Malcolm didn't look at them. Not once. He only looked at us. Let's eat, he said, lowering himself into one of the chairs with a satisfied sigh. I sat down next to him, and Elijah followed. He sat taller than before, straight. He looked around like he finally belonged there. Not on the ground, not on the edge, but right where he was. Want some lemonade? Malcolm asked him. Yes, please, Elijah said. He was glowing. He didn't even touch the macaroni salad anymore. He went straight for the cobbler. Malcolm leaned back and looked at me. Saw the whole thing, you know. I was already in the area. Just wanted to see how things looked this year. You were watching? I asked. He nodded. From the road. Saw the way she smirked. Saw how they didn't move. It's not just about a chair. It's about how they treat you like you're not one of them. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't want to cause a scene. You didn't, he said. They did. I nodded slowly. He was right. I wasn't the one making this ugly. I was just tired of swallowing it. Danica finally walked over, heels crunching on the gravel. She gave us the kind of smile that belongs in fake Christmas cards. Uncle Malcolm, she said. What a surprise. He finally turned to her, calm and casual. Didn't plan on it, but then I heard there weren't enough chairs for family. She laughed, tight and high-pitched. We didn't realize you were coming. Otherwise, of course, we would have saved space. I'm not here for space, he said. I'm here for them. She glanced at me and then at Elijah, who was happily eating cobbler like nothing had happened. Well, she said, shifting her weight, we just didn't have enough chairs. There were a lot of people this year. Malcolm shrugged. Funny how there's always room for the ones who make you feel small. The words hit like a quiet slap. Danica didn't have a comeback. She looked around, suddenly aware that people were listening. Her power had thinned out like smoke. She walked away. No apology, no chairs offered, but it didn't matter anymore. Malcolm sat back and took a bite of his cobbler. You don't always have to raise your voice to be heard, he said, glancing at me. Sometimes you just have to sit down in the right place. I looked at Elijah. He was laughing now, telling his grandpa about a dream he had where they rode dolphins through outer space. His shoulders were loose. His eyes were bright again. I realized then I hadn't just called Malcolm to fix a moment. I'd called him to remind Elijah who he was, that he was seen, that he mattered. And in just a few quiet moves, Malcolm had done what I couldn't. He made us visible. The first bite of Malcolm's cobbler melted in my mouth and nearly made me cry. Not because of the flavor, though it was perfect, but because of what it meant. He had shown up, not just physically, but fully. For Elijah, for me, for the principle that no one, especially a child, should ever be made to feel like less. Elijah was telling him all about the drawing he had been working on that morning, the rocket ship. Malcolm listened like there was nothing more important in the world. Occasionally, he'd nod, ask questions, and throw in a, now that's an idea, or we should build that together next weekend. Around us, the rest of the family went on with their picnic. But something had shifted. People were quieter, glancing over, whispering, watching, but pretending not to. Then Uncle Robert made his move. He stepped out from behind the grill, wiping his hands on a towel. The old man still walked like he owned the place, shoulders squared, chin high, but his eyes darted around more than usual. He made a slow path toward our setup, past the folding tables and coolers, until he stood a few feet from Malcolm. "Well, well," he said, clearing his throat. "Didn't expect to see you here." Malcolm didn't look up. He was handing Elijah a second helping of cobbler. "You know," Robert continued, "it might have been nice to get a heads up. We could have arranged something more comfortable for you." Malcolm finally looked at him, calm, unbothered. "I'm comfortable right where I am." Robert gave a half-hearted laugh. "You always did like to make an entrance." "No," Malcolm replied. "I like to be invited. There's a difference." Robert's smile faded just slightly. "We didn't mean any disrespect." I raised my eyebrows but said nothing. Elijah looked at me, then back at Malcolm, sensing the tension. "You let my niece and her son eat on the ground," Malcolm said, leveling his gaze at Robert. "You let people mock them, and you did nothing." Robert opened his mouth but had no words. He looked at me, then down at Elijah, then back at Malcolm. "That's not how I remember it." Malcolm sat forward, elbows on his knees, tone cool and direct. "It's exactly how it happened. I was parked across the street for 10 minutes before I came over. I saw everything." A hush fell over the nearby tables. A few cousins had gone still, plates in hand, pretending not to eavesdrop. Danica sat farther off, sunglasses on, jaw clenched. Robert looked around, realizing people were listening. Then he said, "Well, we don't need to make a scene." "You already did," Malcolm said. "What I'm doing is correcting it." For a long beat, no one moved. Then Malcolm turned back to Elijah. "You ever build a rocket launcher for a toy rocket? I've got PVC pipe and a compressor in the garage. We could make one fly 50 feet straight up." Elijah lit up like someone flipped a switch. "Really?" "Absolutely," Malcolm said. "We'll need a little math and a lot of duct tape, but I've got a good feeling." Robert shifted awkwardly, then muttered, "Suit yourself," and walked away. Malcolm didn't watch him go. Neither did I, because at that moment something bigger happened. Two of my younger cousins, Marcus and Layla, stood up from their table and walked over, chairs in hand. They set them down near us and asked, "Mind if we join you?" Malcolm smiled and gestured to the empty space. "Plenty of room." Soon after, Aunt Camille brought over a tray of watermelon slices and set them on the folding table with a quiet, "I always hated how they treated you." Her voice cracked, but she didn't wait for a reply. She just walked away with tears brimming in her eyes. One by one, people started drifting toward us. Not all, but enough. They didn't say much, just offered quiet nods, extra plates, soft acknowledgments, not grand gestures, but human ones, the kind that say, "I see you now." Elijah looked around, then leaned toward me and whispered, "Is this our table now?" "It's always been our table," I said. "We just built it ourselves this time." He grinned and turned back to Malcolm, talking now about how to design rocket wings out of cardboard. And me? I sat taller. Not out of pride, but peace. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't demanded. I had called someone who reminded us of our worth. And he came, in a limousine, carrying chairs and justice. By the time the sun started dipping behind the tree line, our side of the picnic looked completely different. Not because of decorations or music or tables piled with food, but because of the feeling. The people sitting around us weren't the loudest or the flashiest. They weren't the ones who had always taken up the most space. They were the ones who had watched in silence for years until they decided they were done with silence. The folding table Malcolm set up with Elijah had become something symbolic. A statement, a quiet rebellion, but more than anything, a welcome mat for those who were done pretending everything was fine just because no one said it out loud. As families began packing up, loading coolers and folding chairs into trunks, I noticed Danica hovering near her car. Her perfect hair was still in place, her dress still crisp, but her posture had changed. She wasn't holding court anymore. She was watching, alone. For once, she didn't feel like the center of anything. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt clear. Elijah climbed into the back seat of the limo with Malcolm, laughing about something that made absolutely no sense to me, something about strapping tennis balls to a drone for aerial food delivery. He was happy, light. His cheeks were sticky with peach cobbler, and his eyes were bright. As I watched them together, I realized this day hadn't broken him like I feared. It had lifted him. Malcolm glanced at me as I walked toward the car. "You okay?" I nodded. "More than okay." He held the door open for me, then sat across from us as the limo pulled out of the lot. The ride home was quiet, just the soft hum of the engine and Elijah chattering to himself in the seat beside me. I looked out the window, watching the trees blur past. I thought about how many times I'd told myself to keep the peace, to not cause waves, to make things easier for everyone else. How many times I'd told Elijah to just be polite, when what I really meant was, don't give them a reason to judge you more than they already do. But that wasn't strength. That was survival. And today had taught me the difference. Strength is calling in your people when you need them. Strength is letting your child see that being treated unfairly isn't normal, and it's not okay. Strength is standing up, not with fists or fury, but with presence, dignity, and a damn folding chair if that's what it takes. When we got to our house, Elijah hugged Malcolm tight before running up to his room to show him the rocket ship drawing. Malcolm leaned against the car and looked at me. "You raised a good one," he said. "I'm trying," I replied. "Today was hard," he nodded slowly. "Sometimes it has to be, so they remember who they are, so they remember they deserve better." Then he smiled, that half-crooked grin that made him look like he was still 25 and rebellious. "I knew you'd call me eventually." I laughed. "How?" "Because you don't yell," he said. "You act. That's your strength. Always has been." He left that night with the same quiet confidence he arrived with. No fanfare, no final words to the rest of the family, just the knowledge that he had shown up when it counted. Later that evening, Elijah crawled into bed with me, something he hadn't done in a while. "Mom," he said, "do I really belong in this family?" The question was so soft I almost missed it. I looked at him and brushed his curls from his forehead. "You belong in this world," I said, "and in any room you walk into. If someone ever tries to make you feel smaller than that, the problem's not you, it's them." He nodded and leaned into me. "I liked when Grandpa showed up. It felt like we mattered." "You do," I whispered. "You always do." And maybe that's what the whole day had been about, not proving anything to people who would never change, but reminding the ones I love that they never had to earn a place at the table. They were already enough. Family isn't defined by blood or tradition. It's defined by who shows up, who stands with you, and who makes space when others won't. My son was told to sit on the floor, but by the end of the day, he knew exactly where he belonged. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up, tell me in the comments, what truth set you free? Set.